Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I'm your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 121, recording on Thursday afternoon, October 16th. You guys will probably be hearing this on Friday. The guest for today is Zach Berman, colleague of mine at The Athletic, who I respect a great deal, has written multiple books on the Eagles, has covered this team for a long, long time, has a bunch of ties in that area, and really sees it as clear as anyone in terms of what's going on over there. Very plugged in with that organization. So we got into this game, big preview of it. Also talked about Carson Wentz and him covering Carson and just the arc of Carson's career. So I think you guys will really, really enjoy this. Zach is great and really had fun kicking it with them for about 30 minutes. As always, if you're new here watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything, but it definitely helps us out. And we really appreciate you doing it. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart or wherever you get your podcast, you can rate and review and follow, and we appreciate that as well. This show is presented by First Resource Bank. That is a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area. They've got branches all over the place, Lino Lakes, wherever lakes are in this region. They've got a branch there. They have a phenomenal online banking platform. It's run by Vikings fans, Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson. Those are Vikings fans. They're also great people. So if you want to bank with some people who care about the community, please check out First Resource Bank. The show is also sponsored by Unreal, the clothing brand based here in Minnesota. I'm wearing it every day now. I think the people who know me well and who see me in this building every day are probably like, what is the deal here? But I mean, why would I not? It's as high quality of stuff as I have, and it looks good. It makes me look better than I already look. I would look. So Unreal information's in the description. They've got limited edition Vikings hoodie drops that are spectacular. So recommend go checking out Unreal. I write for The Athletic, cover the team day to day, do this show multiple times a week. This week it's been 3 episodes, so you can check those out. Talked to Nate Tice earlier in the week. But yeah, that'll do it, and we'll hop right into it. Here's the conversation with Zach Berman of The Athletic talking about this Vikings-Eagles game in depth. All right, Zach, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for hopping on.
It's a pleasure to be on the Alec Lewis Show. My first time, hopefully not my last.
Yeah, right. That's it's a common refrain from folks who hop on. We'll start with Carson Wentz. You covered the guy for a long time. I just am curious, like when your mind thinks of this guy, where do you go? Like, what place does your mind go when people ask you about Carson Wentz or that subject arises?
Yeah, I mean, it's not hyperbole to say that like there was a period of my life when Carson Wentz, when I probably had to think about Carson Wentz more than any human alive, right? Like he was the franchise quarterback, and so much happened with him. So to answer the question succinctly, where does my mind go? It goes back to 2016. Going to North Dakota. I was at the Philadelphia Inquirer at the time, and the Eagles just drafted him, and I spent a week in Fargo and Bismarck and meeting all the nice people in North Dakota. So it goes back to that. But then, honestly, you think back. So I don't just say this because I'm talking to you. You go back to Minnesota. You think about that because the Eagles win the Super Bowl with Nick Foles as the starting quarterback in Minnesota and like in US Bank Stadium. And so the Wentz story, that's such a big part of it is the franchise quarterback being on the sideline when the Eagles win their first Super Bowl, like seeing Nick Foles be the MVP. There's a statue of Nick Foles outside the Eagles Stadium here in Philly. And it's amazing to think, like, the Eagles let Nick Foles leave because Carson was the guy. And Carson, he wasn't just, like, the starting quarterback. He was the organization centered around him. Like, if he wanted something, that's kind of how it went. And the downfall was sudden, so to speak. It's like what's the expression? It's slow and then sudden, right? It was slow and then sudden. And when he gets benched during the COVID year, and then he gets traded at the end of the year. There were a lot of, but I should also add, there are a lot of incredible Carson Wentz memories. Like 2017, the way he played before he got injured, it's hard to play quarterback at a higher level than he did during that season. It was so impressive.
That was the next place I was going to go. Not to make this an entire Carson Wentz, history going down, but it is like my inclination right now. Speaking, this will probably run Friday, and I expect Kevin O'Connell probably to announce a starter on Friday. Like my inclination would be, even with him navigating a very serious non-throwing shoulder injury, like my inclination would be that he is playing the game against his former team on Sunday. So it's all it's interesting and intriguing to me. Like part of that 2017 year before he got hurt, I did wonder like what made him so successful and what allowed him, do you feel like, to be playing at the level that you talk to anyone from those times, they will rave about?
Yeah, so first off, the athleticism, like his ability to extend plays was rare at 6'5", 237 pounds, and like you start there. The gunslinger mentality, and I know that becomes a cliche, but that was very applicable with him. You go back. I remember a Monday night game against Washington where he had two throws where he's escaping pressure, he's rolling out, and he puts a ball in a spot. And you're like, how did that get there, right? And then when you talk about it from like a football perspective, the efficiency on third down that year was ridiculous and probably not sustainable. Like it was an outlier, and so had he not gotten hurt, it would have been interesting to see if he could have kept at that level, because they were just so good on third down that year, and that was a big part of what he did. But I think the athleticism, like the toughness, some of those throws that he made, there was like a magical component to it when he was there. But also, I vividly remember in 2017, so they lose in Seattle, and the Eagles stay out west, and they lose in Seattle in part because he tried diving into the end zone, and the ball, I think he fumbled it out of the end zone, or they lost the fumble, and that was their first loss in 9 games or so. And the whole week while they're in Los Angeles, and there's this whole subplot about Carson Wentz versus Jared Goff, because they were 1-2 in the 16th draft. But the whole subplot that week too was like, can you keep taking these hits? Do you have to be more careful? And some of it was like, this is kind of how he plays the game. And then that next week he gets injured. And by the way, stayed in the game, threw a touchdown with a torn ACL, walked off the field on his own. It's incredible to see. But he was never quite the same thereafter.
It's funny because he spoke to the media on Wednesday, and one of the writers joked with him, like, you thinking about sliding at all? He's like, if I had $1 really for every time that has been tossed my way for so long. And I think part of it, he said, he's like, I mean, you have this preordained plan of wanting to do that, and then you're in the fire, and how difficult is that? It is interesting. I was talking to one of the other writers, like, I do think, and you're probably the perfect person for like 30 years down the road of like how his body and as he reflects on what his body went through with this career, like I do think it'd be like a fascinating kind of deep dive. And I don't know if you got a thought on that, but
and it's just too, in addition to that, like a big thing, when they drafted Carson, like it kind of happened overnight, in that he's at North Dakota State and he emerges into the number 2 pick in the draft. It wasn't, I've covered guys, and this is probably the wrong time to say this, but like Mark Sanchez, right? Like when Mark Sanchez seemed like just like prepackaged franchise quarterback, like the way he acted, the way he talked, like, and this is a guy who was a big time recruit, early starter at SC. Carson Wentz was on the opposite end of that spectrum. Carson Wentz was, and let's even compare it to Jalen Hurts, right? Jalen Hurts was a true freshman starter at Alabama. Played, so it's a lot like Carson Wentz. The way he played, the way he acted, a lot of it was like he wasn't built to be like this prepackaged starting quarterback, and I think he kind of figured it out as he went. And I think a big adjustment for him was leaving that North Dakota cocoon, if you will, and coming to Philly. Anecdotally, he lived like 40 minutes outside in central Jersey farmland, South Jersey farmland, where he could hunt, and it was almost like creating North Dakota in the Philly area as much as he did.
Interesting. It's funny you said that because I was talking to someone who's on those teams, Spencer Phillips, who was an assistant QB's coach, and I was talking to him the other day, and he's like, yeah, we would talk 5:45 a.m. Carson's making his commute in or whatever, and like we're going through the script, and it was interesting to hear a guy like that just reflect on, all those days and the 9 years since and the journey and like I think with everybody, and you could feel it even from Carson talking Wednesday, like there is just a maturity level, there's a growth, there's like a changing of perspective over time, and I'll end it with the question of like, what do you think about the fact that now 10 years from the time you were I don't know, writing profiles of this guy who was drafted to be the franchise quarterback, now he's facing this team in an interesting spot that Philly is right now. Like, what do you think about this potential matchup all these years later almost?
Well, first off, I respect that he's still doing this. And your listeners, your viewers might hear that and be like, it's not like he's digging ditches. He doesn't have to keep playing football, right? And I think it speaks, for him to be, going from backup quarterback with like the Rams, the Chiefs, now the Vikings. I think it speaks to him there. It's a fascinating subplot to this game. Now, enough time has passed, and they did play when he was in Washington in the 2022 season. So it's not like the first time that they played, and it's not in Philly. And it would be interesting if the game was in Philly because, you haven't really seen like that reunion in Philly. But I do think that if I've seen Carson get hot, and and you know this better than me. I mean, you've seen him, this season. I watched the Europe games early in the morning, but I haven't seen him up close. I haven't really studied him, and so but when Carson gets hot, he can still sling it. It looks like he can still move a bit, right? And so the Eagles defense, which is struggling from a pass rush perspective, they only have 9 sacks this season in 6 games. They're trying to figure out who their second corner is. They're trying to figure out how their first corner is if Quinyon doesn't play. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a little extra juice for Carson this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting to watch him. Like, I think the under talked about element of his time here thus far is, I mean, he was signed without even a month until the season. Like, he played within a month of being signed here. So there wasn't this long ramp up in what is a system that is very complex. So it's been interesting. All right. Done a lot of Carson Wentz. I am looking for, if he's the guy, I am looking forward to it. I'll just start you with this. Wednesday, I know it was big media day always ahead of these games. It looked like, just viewing your tweets and reporting from Wednesday, there was a lot of conversation. What did you feel like the vibe was Wednesday in that building with how Jalen and a bunch of folks seemingly talked about kind of that situation over there?
Yeah, it's a team that needs to figure out what the issue is, right? Defending Super Bowl champs, they started 4-0, but this offense is really struggling. They've lost 2 in a row. They lost to the Giants. The offense shouldn't be as inconsistent, out of sync as it's been. So they had kind of this mini bye, right? They played on a Thursday night, and last year the season turned around basically during the bye week. They were 2-2. They had a Week 5 bye. And they almost redid their offense, or like committed to running the ball. But thereafter, they lost 1 game the rest of the season, including the playoffs, and were finished the year as one of the great teams in football history. When you look at the way they were playing in the Super Bowl. So all that said, like there's a lot of talk from that locker room about a positive meeting on Monday, about getting back in sync, about improving their execution, about really kind of, it's the football cliche. Everyone do your job. That's what Jordan Mailata was saying. But this is a team that needs to figure out its identity because it is, 7 weeks into the season, you can't keep saying, oh, small sample size and we'll see what, this becomes who you are. And they need to figure that out. And I think the veterans on the team know it.
Offensively for Philly, if you were to make or you're separating like a blame pie of OC, quarterback, skill players, offensive line, how do you segment kind of those parties with seemingly the issues that are pretty apparent, I guess, from afar in the numbers on film, et cetera?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's never one thing, as you know. I think that I always start with the players because this is a players' game. And, the offensive line can play better and has played better and needs to play better. And when you look at the run offense, that's a big part of it. But I can't absolve the coaching staff and Kevin Patullo, the offensive coordinator in particular. And the reason I say that is because, and the Eagles probably push back on this opinion, but to me, the burden of proof is on the first-year play caller. It's not on an offense they have 9 Pro Bowl caliber players in their offense. They returned 10 of 11 starters from last year. So I've seen these guys play at a high level. I've seen these guys be among the best offenses in the league. The big change here is the first-time play caller. And as good of a coach as you may be, there's a difference between coaching and play calling. There are different skills. You're scheming your offensive mind and picking the plays in the menu, whether it's sequencing, whether it's the literal act of getting the play in, whether it's making adjustments as the game goes, seeing what the defense does. I think Kevin needs to do a better job there. And I think the Eagles might have their guard up about that, but through 6 games, I think that the offensive coordinator needs to be better than he's been so far.
It is interesting hearing you talk about that because it does feel like there are a ton of guys probably who successfully can design offense, design plays, but it is like that in-game feel. It is, you said sequencing. I mean, one of the things with Brian Flores, who Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni will be matched up with, I mean, Brian Flores is as adaptable in game as it gets. And so this matchup for me is so interesting because you have that unit that is going to, they have a lot to prove against a defensive coordinator and a defense that is usually one step ahead, that is adaptable, that is creative, that is not stagnant. And so it is, in some ways, it's like it feels like a pretty. If they can prove it against this matchup, I do think that would probably speak volumes about the evolution through the last couple weeks. And I could be wrong about that, but it's interesting to me.
No, you're right. This is when you look at it on paper. Some of the things Brian Flores does well really kind of doesn't match up with what the Eagles do. So, this is a chance to be a buzzsaw for the Eagles if they don't figure these things out offensively. Now, that said, I think an offense that has A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley in the backfield, Dallas Goedert at tight end, Jalen Hurts at quarterback, on the offensive line, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Len Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, there's no reason why this offense shouldn't be able to move the ball with ease. There's no reason why this offense should be number 2 in the NFL right now in 3-and-out rate. The only team that has 3-and-out more is the Tennessee Titans, who've just fired their head coach. So that's a roundabout way of saying that, yeah, I mean, I think that this is going to be a major challenge for the Eagles, but I think what the Eagles need to fix more than anything else is internal. And I say that because – they've beaten 3 of the top 5 teams in the NFL when you look at the Athletics power rankings. They beat the Chiefs, they beat the Bucks, they beat the Rams. The Eagles can play with anybody, but they can also lose to anybody when they get in their own way.
Yeah, and I do think, we haven't, talked a ton, but I think the run game in this game, it feels like just reading some of the reporting from yesterday. And then knowing that the Vikings run defense has been the Achilles heel of this defense thus far, that to me feels like where the rubber meets the road. And I'd be curious to you is like I mean, maybe it's as simple as maybe Landon Dickerson's back and that helps things. Maybe it's, more complex and it's Jalen Hurts more in the run game as from a QB run standpoint. How do you feel like they are planning or, trying to put together a run game that is more, I guess, what they, it's more their bread and butter?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like I think to start off with the O-line needs to play better, right? They need to get Saquon yards before contact. When you look at it's like Saquon was historical rate last year of yards before contact, and that hasn't happened this year. So the O-line needs to play better. But I think a big part of it, when you talk about execution, and Lane Johnson used the word predictable, it's because they're getting negative plays on first down. It's putting them behind the sticks, and you're a predictable offense when you're in second and long, third and long, and so they need to get that. They need to be more productive on first down, so they can get second down runs in there. They can get third down runs in there. They have the chance for some explosives in that regard. And Saquon, he needs to get to the second level, they keep saying they're close, but there's no yards for close, right? There's only yards gained, and so I do think that's that. Positive plays on first down, getting into 2nd and 6 and 2nd and 4. I think that would change things quite a bit for the Eagles' running game.
I did look up those numbers, and if I'm not mistaken, the yards before contact average is like 1.5 yards less this year than last year, which is pretty stark. I mean, it's now they were phenomenal last year in that regard, but it was pretty interesting to me. Where are you at with Landon Dickerson in terms of his availability? And I know it's early in the week.
Yeah, he was out there on a limited basis yesterday. Now Landon plays through things like historically, but when he plays through things, it doesn't necessarily mean you're getting Pro Bowl version of Landon Dickerson.
Sure,
but they did miss him against the Giants, and I think even Landon Dickerson at, let's say, 70% or 80%, whatever it may be, is probably better for this offense than Brett Toth at 100% or near 100%. So I think the fact that Landon was out there on a limited basis is a positive because I don't have the data in front of me, but I would bet that through Landon's career, if he practiced on a limited basis, no matter, he played on Sunday, he players marvel at the things that he plays through.
And then this is about as in the weeds as possible. But I Steen, the right guard, like what has been your evaluation of him? Just watching the film against the Giants, it was interesting to me. And obviously they had Mekhi Becton last year, and so that's a new player. But like, what have you felt just in terms of the way he's played through 6 games?
Yeah, good question. I don't think he's been like as bad as fans might suggest. I do think Mekhi Becton was better in the run game, and I think they missed Mekhi Becton in the run game. And I mean Becton was a mauler, right? And,
he's gigantic.
Yeah, 6'8", 360, and like with long arms. Is that if he gets out on you, he's creating space, and so I think they missed Becton in the run game. But I don't think Steen has been horrible per se. But I think that they have 4 Pro Bowl caliber players on the O-line. I don't think Cam Jurgens has played to the level that I believe he can play to. Landon Dickerson's obviously been banged up. Jordan Mailata's been banged up a bit. So there's a lot of guys. I think if their blue chip players play like blue chip players, then they'll be fine. And because they've had a rotating cast of right guards really, since Isaac Seumalo left after the 2022 season, and they're able to get by because the rest of the team is so good. Yeah.
Defensively, you mentioned the pass rush and the lack of sack production, and I just have the Super Bowl seared into my mind of how menacing they were on the front. I know Jalen Carter didn't play last week. On film, I thought Ojomo looks pretty active on the interior. Jalix Hunt feels interesting to me. Still, obviously, a young player. They don't have Nolan Smith. Like obviously, Zadarius Smith, who was here and had 10 sacks here, he just recently retired. Like, how possible do you feel like an improved pass rush is beyond any external acquisition right now?
Yeah. Well, first off, you're an astute observer, so I appreciate that you watched the film, because if you're talking to someone who's just like looking at the depth chart, they might not mention Moro Ojimo. But I
I'm
bring that up
nuts.
because
That's what I'm nuts.
but like the interior pass rush has been productive for them. Between Ojimo, Jalen Carter commands a lot of double teams, but he creates space for others. Jordan Davis, I think, is playing his best football this year. But their edge rush is not there right now, and that's the part that I think is an Achilles heel right now. And you can say sacks don't tell the whole story, but I don't think they're getting enough pressure from the edge. And this is a team that lost Josh Sweat from last year, lost Brandon Graham. They traded Bryce Huff, even though Bryce Huff wasn't a big part of what they were doing, but not having Nolan Smith has been a big factor here. Smith's been limited to 3 games, and they have some other guys who are banged up. So Josh Uche, Azeez Ojulari, Patrick Johnson, those are the next guys after Jalex Hunt, and that hasn't been cutting it. The Zadarius Smith retirement does affect them, and so I think that this doesn't help them for Sunday. I think that's a spot where I would look for the Eagles to make a move at the deadline. As far as Sunday, what can the Eagles do? It wouldn't surprise me if Jahad Campbell or Zach Bond get a little more work in like an overhang spot, because those are guys that have athletic ability and versatility to get to the quarterback. And with Nakobe Dean back from injury, the Eagles have a surplus, if you will, at linebacker. But to me, the biggest issue with the pass rush right now is the edge rushers aren't getting home.
Yeah, it is. It's funny you mentioning Vaughn and just watching on film. Like, I'm sure you know this, but Brian Flores loved him in that free agency period that Vic Fangio obviously and the Eagles acquired him in, and then the Isaiah Rodgers crossover. Like, those are 2 very interesting like margin signings that have been huge for both sides, and they're just interesting to me. I guess, like, to segue a little bit, the cornerback 2 spot feels like one that has been a big conversation there with Adoree Jackson and Keely Ringo. Isaiah Rodgers here was obviously in that building. What have you thought of the cornerback position and kind of where they're at?
Well, first off, quick anecdote about Bond that's relevant to your listeners and viewers is, so the Eagles hire Vic Fangio, and the player that they really kind of wanted in the free agency class that year was Andrew Van Ginkel. But they were going to be priced out of Van Ginkel, right? And I think that was pretty clear early on that like they weren't going to spend that, and they pivoted to Bond, who played that Van Ginkel role at Wisconsin. Like Wisconsin has a history of these versatile linebackers who can play off ball, who can get to the quarterback, and so Bond was kind of, I don't want to say that he was like the number 2 option, but when it became clear that like they're not going to get Van Ginkel, I think that's when they really focused on bringing Bond in, and they didn't bring Zach Bond in to be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He was supposed to be like a depth guy for them. So to the question about corners, Isaiah Rodgers, I think that the Eagles thought they could get him back. It's a guy that they wanted to have back. I don't feel out of place reporting that. I think that going into free agency or going into the offseason, they were hoping to bring back Isaiah Rodgers. Now, I could push back on the Eagles and saying you had, the whole season in January and February and a week in March. Like, once a guy hits the open market, then he's available to sign wherever. Mm-hmm. That's what happened. But Isaiah Rodgers, and I don't need to tell you, he's been a good player in Minnesota, and he would be a starting cornerback for the Eagles right now. And outside, that spot opposite Quinyon Mitchell, they've cycled through Keely Ringo, Adoree Jackson. They traded for Jacorian Bennett, and Cam Bennett's hurt right now. But if Mitchell plays, it's going to be Adoree on the other side. But the fact that this is still unsettled in Week 7, I think speaks to how much they miss Isaiah Rodgers.
Yeah, and the thing about Rodgers that's so interesting is it's not just the athleticism and like the competitiveness, but just his ball skills and kind of awareness on the field. It's been very impressive. And it was, he was the first. The interesting thing is he was the first guy they signed in free agency. So you could tell from the outset, like, he was a target for them. I remember speaking to people around him. It was like, yeah, Brian Flores wanted to make that happen very aggressively, and they've reaped the rewards of that. Do you have we're early in the week. Do you have a feel on the game at all?
I wish I had a stronger feel on it.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Eagles are road favorites, right? And so when you look at that, you say they're the better team, and the Vikings are playing with a backup quarterback, and I assume a backup quarterback. And it's the type of thing where, like, the Eagles can win by 2 touchdowns or they can lose by 2 touchdowns just because of how volatile they've been. But I'm leaning toward the Eagles because I just think they're the better team. I think that there's too much talent for them to look this way. They're coming now. I know the Vikings are also coming off extended rest; they have a bye, but the Eagles are coming off that mini bye, and I mean Minnesota's a tough place to play. The Eagles haven't been there since actually Carson was with the Eagles in the 19 season, right?
Wow.
2019. But I think that if the Eagles play like 80%, 90% of their best game, they should be able to beat Minnesota. But I really like the Vikings coaching staff. I'd be worried if I'm Vic Fangio right now about the matchups on Justin Jefferson, and that if Carson gets time, the Eagles can be vulnerable in the back end.
And that's why I think, I mean, I'm with you where I'm totally unsure, really, and I could probably go either way. But it is the health of the Vikings offensive line is going to be huge. I mean, Brian O'Neill, the right tackle, has practiced thus far this week. We'll see about him. Donovan Jackson, the rookie left guard, who was pretty good the first couple games, is coming back from a wrist injury. That'd be pretty big to get him back. Christian Darrisaw should have a full workload at left tackle. And I'm with you. Like, if they can protect Carson and give him time to find Justin and Jordan Addison and TJ Hockenson, those guys on the field, Jalen Naylor, I don't know. I could see the Vikings offense having success, but it is kind of, I do want to see Quinyon Mitchell at full strength against Justin and Jordan Addison, because I think that dude is amazing. And going back to the Senior Bowl, remember Brian Flores at the Senior Bowl Mobile having a long conversation with Quinyon Mitchell, and always thought that was maybe a possibility in that draft. So should be fun. Zach, thanks for hopping on and going down Carson Wentz memory lane.
Absolutely
it was fun.
Enjoyed this, and I should also add, just because I always enjoy Philadelphia minutia, that both Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell have Philly area roots, right? Kwesi's from Cherry Hill, right across the bridge, and Kevin O'Connell lived a part of his life, I believe, in Delaware County, or has family in Delco. So I know the game's not in Philly, but I always keep tabs on the Philly area guys. Kwesi's definitely a Philly area guy, and I think O'Connell gets to be an honorary one based on his family roots there.
I think he would take that, and it is interesting. Like Ryan Grigson, one of the executives, like he and Howie are very close. There is a lot of crossovers, so it should be fun. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate it, man. We will talk soon. Safe travels out here early in the morning. Looking forward to seeing you at US Bank, which should be pretty active on Sunday, I would think.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Alec.
And that'll do it for episode 121 of the Alec Lewis Show. Appreciate you guys being here. Thank you to Zach for his time. You can find his work over at The Athletic, where he does his day job covering this team. He also has multiple books about the Eagles dynasty, if that's your cup of tea. But yeah, great conversation. Going to be a very fascinating game, as you probably can sense from the way I talked about it. I'm uncertain. A lot of talent on the field, a lot of questions on both sides. Can't wait to be back at US Bank for this contest. The show is presented by First Resource Bank. It is sponsored by Unreal. And two great companies locally based that I wanted to support, and they've wanted to support as well. So looking forward to the game. Thank you guys for being here. If you made it this way on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. It's really free. And if you're listening, you can follow and rate and review and all that good stuff. But that'll do it for episode 121. If you're going to the game, enjoy it. If you're not, enjoy watching it on TV with Greg Olson and Adam Amin. And with that, we'll catch you on the other side. Excuse me. This is the Alec Lewis Show. Thank you guys for being here.